name is Michał Bornicki, and it's a pleasure to have you here at this panel discussion called it's under the name Not Fair. The title is Let the Meat Cake, and we've got a great guests here, panelists. We started with Alain Servais, great collector, former banker. And then, after presentation by Alan, there's going to be an open discussion, so you're also welcome to participate. The discussion will be with Natalia Sielewicz, curator of Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw, Marta Kirszenbaum, independent curator and curator of French Pavilion for next upcoming Venice Biennale, Clément Delépine, former curator of Swiss Institute in New York and co-director of Paris International, and Darren Flook, former gallerist, co-founder of Independent Art Fairs, and now founder of Project Space in London. So, and please be part of it, like ask questions, comment, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Michal, for inviting me and us. So I'll be fast and direct, so don't hesitate to interact, it would be a pleasure. So why am I here? In life, I'm an investment banker, so I've got a pretty long experience of business. But I'm also a passionate art lover, and I have the chance to be able to collect as well. And I've seen in the last 10 years too many of my favorite galleries closing. So this is why I got a deep interest into the kind of the economics of the art market, and it's given me a good position as a collector and an investment banker to give some views and opinions about it. So my questions and remarks here will be around that field. I always like to start with something quite strange. First of all, what is art? Because when we speak about the art market, I think that very often you have kind of people speaking about baseball and cricket sometimes. And it seems to be the same thing. There's a bat and there are balls, but it's not the same sport. So what the art, because for some people, the guy on the Domingo Zapata is an artist who's selling this kind of work for $100,000, around kind of celebrity level things. And every one of you, because I recognize here quite a few art lovers, will say this is no art. But it sells for $100,000, in a very fancy place, 500 meters away from Art Basel in Miami. And I was quite astonished when I saw this, because I know how hard it is to sell art today. So I was saying, do I consider this art or not? And that's a question. The second guy is Thomas Kinkade. Thomas Kinkade is the widest sold artist in the United States under the form of poster, reproduction, and everything. I think he sold by himself over $60 million of art. Again, it's a lot of money for many of artists here or gallerists here. But again, is this art or not? The Infinity Room is probably my worst art enemy at this moment. He absolutely hates the fact that people are queuing for seeing this, and there's no one to go to the Riga Biennial or any museums or any galleries system. So is this art or not, this kind of experiential art? The same with the Rain Room. Then we have this kind of art. I mean, this is tons of money. When people see it, do they see the tens of thousands of millions of dollars that they represent, or is this still about the content and the meaning? So I think it's very important when we speak about the art market to decide what kind of art we're talking about. And that's a question, I always start my presentation of the collection at home with this question: what is art for you? Because you can find it or you will not find it. So what is kind of the art I think I'm trying to defend here, and many of the galleries that I'm going to talk about are trying to survive doing? I like the definition of the boroughs. I like the fact a lot of time when we see first work, we don't know, we are irritated. I often hear people recommending, buy what you like, buy what you love. I think you should buy what you don't like, and you should buy what you don't love. That's the big difference between the art I'm trying to defend here, and trying to find solution for it to survive. Because in fact, as you know, more and more people are interested in art. There are more and more people buying art. But what is the kind of art they're buying? Very often it's the art that they know, that they can refer to, that is looking like a Picasso, looking like a Kandinsky, looking like this, looking like that. But it's not really the kind of disruptive art that we love. And the galleries that are suffering right now and are trying to find models to survive are the ones that are defending that kind of disruptive art. The kind of art that irritates when it's seen for the first time, but that you kind of begin to love when you get to understand what they represent. And yes, it's true that I think that at my old age, 55 almost, for me being old is when you are no longer interested in other people. But if you are still collecting, that means you're still interested in the opinion of others and you still want to learn. And as you realize, this kind of mentality is kind of disappearing. I tend to believe that there's maybe the same numbers of true collectors, of this kind of passionate collectors are described here by the boroughs. But the percentage is decreasing, because maybe 20 years ago they were constituting the majority of the art market, and today they are a tiny minority. And that's the problem, is that they cannot make every disruptive gallery survive. So, we're getting to our subject. I will stick to the kind of collaboration model. Again, there's long quotes, but I like when people write good texts rather than making long sentences I let you read at the same time. So there's not been a disconnect in the system between thriving and struggling galleries, and we know this today. No, as many dealers take survival into their own hands, the spirit of independence will become ever more important. Especially for galleries working with younger and mid-career artists, collaboration and innovation will be key. And I like that quote for a different reason. First of all, I see three words that I'd like to comment. Spirit of independence, collaboration, innovation. And you will notice, I'm sure, that two of them seems to be contradictory, because spirit of independence and collaboration does not match. And that's what I would like to draw attention on, is that definitely collaboration is a way forward, and innovation as well. Because right now the model is to go to think that you're going to be saved by going to art fairs. But art fairs with their cost and their fixed cost is a killer, and we're going to cover this subject with the next panel discussion. So what can you do if you don't do art fairs? If you are based in Warsaw, if you don't do art fairs outside, what can you do? Collaboration is a way, and that's why the Gallery Weekend is a very good example. The Friend of a Friend that you're organizing here is a good example as well, where you can put together the forces to make it work. Collaboration implies that sometimes you have to overcome kind of opposition, competition, old stories, and sometimes I see in some cities that some galleries cannot get into the system. You know, there's been comment about the Berlin Gallery in Gallery Week. I don't remember the name of the gallery that was always excluded for many time and became public about it. Sorry, Exile. I noticed in the last Friend of a Friend in Warsaw that Local 30 was not in the list, and I heard vaguely that there was some kind of old stories behind. So collaboration implies that you are killing kind of the opposition. You have to be able to work with not your friends, even if you are part of a Friend of a Friend. So innovation is many different things, and we'll come back on this. But spirit of independence is very important as well. Is that the problem very often in the gallery system that I see in comparison with other kind of businesses is that it's very emotional. Kind of friendship, non-friendship, opposition, but also sometimes making everybody moves at the same time can be very difficult. And it's very important not to stay with the group. If the whole group is throwing itself above the cliff, you should not follow and keep your spirit of independence. That means that you should try by yourself. I think it's very important as well. So expect more initiatives like the condo gallery swap, whereby dealers, you know what it is. New models are likely to appear, some radical and previously unimaginable, as dealers try increasingly resourceful ways to reanimate interest. Many others, stuck in the unsustainable past and perhaps simply tired of the 5-week close. There will be many galleries closing still, many more. And it will be mostly the ones that don't want to try to change, because using the same model that existed 20 years ago or 40 years ago, let's call it the Castelli model, will not work anymore. So it is necessary to move now. And one way is those collaborative models, but there's also the ability of doing more than this. So if you start to try to collaborate and to try to innovate, you must clearly define what are your goals. I've been doing quite a few condos, friend of a friend, and other initiatives, Okie Dokie, Cologne, Brussels, and everything. And I've been struck by a few points, which is a little bit inherent to the gallery system, because we must not forget that very often starting a gallery is starting kind of an ideal project. It's not that you have a business plan. It's not something you want to do to make money. So very often the way of living is as important of the result, the end result very often. So the kind of the friendship, the camaraderie, those elements are very important. But it's not enough, because today the situation is difficult for the disruptive art again, because if you want to sell, expensive, what's his name, the Wojciech, or the guy doing the round here in Poland, the abstract rounds. Van Gogh, when you have some Van Gogh, you're going to make tons of money selling them. But the thing is, this is not about this kind of art. It's about a new art. Let's say the art that I've seen in the galleries this weekend in Warsaw, because I've been very positively surprised by what I saw here. It's a kind of disruptive, difficult art that we can see majority here. But I like that comment from that journalist about various other in Munich that happened last week. She said, participating in condo and alternative art fairs formats are often cagey about sales. I too often hear that this is not about selling, it's about creating camaraderie. But is it enough today to kind of survive by having more friends? You need to do some sales, and it's important to know how to do it. And why is it appearing? Because from my experience in condo, for example, condo is a model where, differently than friend of friends, if I remember well, is that a gallery in London is lending part of its space for 1 month, 1 full month. So imagine that you are in Warsaw and you have the possibility to show in London for 1 month. It's a fantastic opportunity. But you need to play it professionally. Personally, as a businessman, I would say, okay, I'm going to do Condo London. I'm very happy to be invited by this gallery, let's say Maureen Palais, in the East Side. And I will stay for 1 month in London, because it will be my chance to do an immersion in London, rather than doing, my alternative would be to do Frieze. But Frieze will cost me $25,000 to $30,000, the whole thing packaged together. And what will I get? I will be there standing in a booth for 5 days. People will be ultra busy. They will focus on the galleries they know. What are my chances of getting to connect with people? Another alternative would be to stay in London for 1 month with the gallery, having the chance that the gallery would send the invitation to their clients. The clients would come. To be around London, going to the openings, visiting the events, going sometimes to collectors' dinners there and to get to know them better. Personally, if I was invited in Kondo, I would stay 1 month. And I would try to bring the best work I can in London, because it's my chance to show what I am. This is normally what you try to do in an art fair. What I see too often in Kondo and a different formula like this is I see galleries bringing with them what I call suitcase art, which is everything they can pack in their suitcase on a Ryanair flight, which is not so much. A few drawings, a few sculptures here and there, nothing really important. But how do you want me, seeing this gallery from Warsaw in London, how do you want me to get interested by what I see? Because it's very minor works. It's very uninteresting in many ways. And so I go back to the galleries, I make the effort to go to the galleries, I want to be exposed to those new galleries. And I get something which is not worth the time and the effort. Second thing is I get to the gallery and I want to meet the gallerist. I want to meet Michal or David or whoever will be traveling there. I know Michal will be there, but it has been happening quite often that I went to the Kondo galleries and the gallery was not there. The guest gallery, so the Polish gallery, the Mexican gallery, was not in the gallery. And worst is that I heard afterwards that some galleries that were the hosts, so the gallery from London, was having a bit of a trouble because they were still showing for 1 month the work of another gallery, not making any commission on this at all, speaking about it to their own clients, but the gallerist, the guest, was not even coming back to London. So for 3 days, 2 days, the galleries were coming to London, partying quite heavily, and then leaving on the Sunday and not coming back. I'm sorry, but this is what the second example, the second comment that was made about another initiative in New York called the Chelsea Gallery Walk. The danger would be to fool ourselves into believing that intermittent programming and passive participation can be enough for galleries to regain traction. So that's my comment about those collaborative systems, collaborative initiatives, is that it needs to be done more professionally and more investments. And I would say that one example, it is maybe one of the good thing and the bad thing. A very good thing is that it is free. That means that you're invited in London for free. The bad thing is that very often when you get a gift for free, you don't care as much as if you have to pay 5,000 euro for it. And that's the difference. Because when you pay a participation to a fair, you say, I've got to make something out of it. And so you invest time, energy to make it work. If you have a free invitation to a gallery, maybe there's a chance that you will take less time and investment for doing it. And that's one of the weaknesses right now of that collaborative program. And I think it's very important to be very careful with this because there are not many alternatives. This Kondo model, let's call it like this, is one of the few alternatives to the art fair. And today those disruptive galleries are not the ones that are working well on the art fairs. So what else can they do if they want to expose themselves to the larger and to other cities? They need to have initiatives like Kondo. Those are very important alternatives. So it's important that they do it professionally. What kind of other innovation? Because I talked about the Kondo model, but what other innovation? I think education is a very important one. The only way to, what is missing very much, and I was speaking to Michal yesterday, was a bit frustrated sometimes that when he meets collectors or buyers, he tries to explain them what the work is about and trying to get in depth about what the artist means, or sometimes to get the artist to speak. And the only reaction he gets is, yeah, but it's looking a little bit like what did you say, Matisse? It's looking like a bit of Matisse. It makes me think about the brutalist, whatever shit thing, because people are always trying to refer to something they know. They're not really interested in getting in outside of their comfort zone. So I think it's very important that education is a key point. So I like, obviously it's a special case, but I like this initiative in India by probably one of the best emerging gallery in India called Experimenter. And very regularly they organize organized program of education of very high level on their premises to their clients or visitors or customers, and they get exposed to very high level of talks. Very interesting. Another example was an example by this gallerist, I forgot his name, in New York. He's recommending this, encourage connoisseurship. And I agree with this, is that in a way the relationship between the collectors and the galleries is a bit different. And I think it's not a problem to sometimes go around other galleries with your clients, educate them, show them, bring them their attention to what's happening. You can even arrange, there's no reason to do it for free, everybody needs to live, and if you manage to sell it to, from one of your colleagues in the same city or another city, why should you not get a commission? I see no problem with that, and I think no one would find a problem with this. But the thing is go around, use your knowledge and your connoisseurship to bring it and to give it to other collectors. So, innovation is something always important. We talk about international. International is a very interesting innovation in Paris because a lot was going on, but it was still not enough for defending those kind of disruptive galleries. So they took it in hand and they did it themselves. The same with Berlin, who is a very special case with very few collectors. So they need really to be kind of a laboratory for new initiative. You know that next week will be Art Berlin. And I like this idea of that nobody noticed so much. It's called Salon. Then imagine that you don't have the money to do a big fair, even not the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10,000 that are necessary. So what Salon is doing is the curator picked up 40 works from different galleries, even galleries that are not present on the art fair. But in fact, it is the chance to show your artists, to show your name, and maybe to get contacts. And I think it's a pretty interesting initiative from an art fair. And we'll see how it works, and we will see next week how it works. And then you have, of course, and we'll talk about it later probably, the fact that mega galleries are recognizing the necessity that you don't pay the same amount per square meter for a gallery showing disruptive art and a gallery showing Fagor, whatever, Fagor. It's not the same thing. You can sell them like hotcakes for $500,000, or you have to fight to sell something for $5,000 or $10,000. So it's not normal that you pay the same amount of square meter. And I think that it's very clear that the mega galleries are more and more aware of that, and nobody discussed the fact that there will be a differential in terms of pricing between mega galleries and more galleries, other galleries. So other kind of initiative with Darren. You see, Darren, I quoted you. I just copy and paste, so you cannot say I misquoted you. So he will talk about the initiative he's been developing. He had a gallery, he was a curator, he did many different things. So he's opening another kind of experimental space in London, opening next Sunday. What I liked from that quote that was coming there is I would like also to draw some attention to this. Artists want what big galleries want to offer. Because very often we speak about the problem of the galleries, we forget that the collectors are responsible. I feel myself responsible to try to do the necessary, to come to smaller galleries, to go to visit, to come and to buy from them, rather than to buy from mega galleries, which are offering larger dinner, more fancy dinners and more fancy events. But it's my responsibility, but it's also the responsibility of the artists, because too many artists are thinking that they are Caravaggio or Leonardo da Vinci, and they kind of like the treatment that they get from the mega galleries. I want a catalog, I want an assistant, I want a production, I want a transport. When I saw Michal hanging this thing, it's 5 meters high, I said, Jesus Christ, this is what it is to be a gallerist of this type. But you don't have, at Hauser and Will there would be something of an electronic elevator recommended by an internet link somewhere in Zug or something, so it would be another story. But artists are also responsible to try to support the galleries by being faithful to them, if necessary, fair, because I will go back later to the problem of the contract between artists and galleries, because the artists have got their role to play. And I remember when I was listening to Vanessa Carlos via internet to a talk she was giving about this in Miami, if I remember well. She said, one of the first things I'm doing is make my artists aware of the costs of defending their work in an art fair. And the responsibility that they have. There's some people that have been arguing that sometimes the splits between artists and galleries is unfair at 50-50, and some would say that it should be 70% for the gallery and 30% for the artist. It should be discussed openly, because sometimes it can be very expensive to produce work, take the risk of art fairs and so on. So artists have got a role to play, and that's what I wanted to underline with this small word from Darren. So you would say, okay, cool, let's do condos, we don't need to do so many Art Basel, Art Fairs and Freeze, we still do international because it's not too expensive, but we do the collaborative, so everything will, and we will be saved. Okay, sorry, no, it's not enough to be saved. Because unfortunately, the infrastructure on which the art market is currently working is not working properly. Many things need to be done to make it work. One of them is the relationship between galleries and artists. The proper way, the proper old way was, what is the difference in a way between the galleries I was calling disruptive and the others is that the galleries that are disruptive take charge and responsibility of the career of the artists. They're working for it, they're trying to devise the best strategy to make it work. They're talking to them all the time. They're helping them by producing the works, trying to get in contact with curators to get them news and shows. This is what it is. This is the kind of Castelli model in some way. The problem is that in the current world, the big reason of the mega galleries, and I've been writing an article about it, you can find them on the internet if you're interested, is that why galleries became bigger and bigger is that the power of the artist became bigger and bigger, and everybody wants an artist which is selling hot. And what happened right now is I see too often artists that say, okay, because sometimes they ask me, what do you think about me going to Raster as a gallery? They asked me to represent me. I said, yeah, very good gallery. Yeah, but I don't know, maybe I'm hoping for bigger, but maybe yes, I do a couple of shows, but I'm hoping that Perrotin will come and pick me up. And that's the problem, is that sometimes the artists, they're not really committed to the galleries, and it makes it then difficult for the artists to commit, to the galleries to commit themselves, because they have to invest a lot of time and energy and money to make the artist succeed. So what happened is that if suddenly Perrotin comes knocking on the door, the artist will say, okay, my friend, you understand, thank you very much, you've been super nice for 5 years, 10 years, I did super good things now, but now that I got selected by Massimiliano Gioni for the next biennial of Venice or Tombouctou or whatever, now Perrotin is coming to knock my door, and they can go away. But the problem is that the ecosystem is then all fragile. And we've seen it so often. We've seen it with small galleries, we've seen it with large galleries. We've seen large galleries like Cheyman Reed closing, Andrea Rosen closing, because they lost key artists. So when I mean infrastructure, is that because the art market is getting more professional, we need to make it a stronger legal infrastructure. One of them is to get better contract between artists and galleries. For me, it's a necessity. And I hear that there's still a lot of problems, resistance of artists, and I know it's that sometimes when they read something, 3 pages of contract, they get extremely nervous and they say, I didn't sleep for 3 nights because I had to see that 3 pages artists about a commission or something. But so it needs to be something which is accepted by the whole system. It's not a one-by-one case, because sometimes I've seen very bad contract by galleries to their artists, sometimes I've seen the reverse. So we need to think about that problem of transfer. We need to think, as Tim Schneider was saying it, we need to think about having contracts. And he was thinking also about, how you want to make it work as an industry. And the industry, I spoke about collaboration and innovation, and we need to go back to also some organism of representation. What happened in sports is that there were kind of a system where you said, okay, there will be a negotiation between the union of the club owner with the union of the players, with the union of the journalists, with the union with whatever, the football producer, and they all speak together and they try to take the solution for the best of the whole industry. This is totally missing in the art market right now, because it's all individualistic, it's all working one by one, so it's not getting there in any way, which means that the only law that is ruling the art market right now is the law of the strongest. The more powerful you are, the more you are imposing your views. And it doesn't work. And again, we go back to what we started, is that then we're losing the best galleries from that point. So we need to, the idea is straightforward. Large groups empower a few trustworthy representatives to negotiate on their behalf in pursuit of terms that everyone in the collective can live with. It is either ignorant or disingenuous to act as if implementing a limited set of mutually beneficial common sense regulation is the same as turning the gallery sector into a soulless, mechanized dictatorship. That's what I hear too often when I speak to this kind of panel, is that I hear, yeah, but you don't understand. I remember I had a panel and I had a gallerist in the assembly in Barcelona telling me, you don't understand what the art is about. My relationship to my artist is like my family. It's like a love relationship. So you don't understand that this is soulless and mechanized. I just asked him, Edwards, are you married? He looked at me very surprised. Why are you asking me this? He said, yes, I'm married. Did you sign a contract with your wife? Why did you sign a contract? This is love. So what should it be a contract in your marriage and not in your gallery system? I didn't get an answer. But it's a totally, I say it, ridiculous reply. That this is ruled by love and friendship and motherfucker stupidity of that fight, okay? You get a contract for your wedding because you want to protect the weaker parts. Sometimes the artist is the weaker part, sometimes the gallery is the weaker part, but everybody must be protected. So we need to review that infrastructure from them. Call me crazy, but I'm willing to let the pilots try anything they want, as soon as they want. If all the evidence tells me that letting the plane stay on its current course will crash us into a mountain. So that's my conclusion. There was another thing I had an opening for the rest, but that's a little bit my conclusion. Collaborative work, innovation works, but we need also to work in depth about the legal infrastructure and the technical infrastructure of the whole system. And this was my opening about art fairs. I was a bit annoyed by this headline. Everybody liked that article in the New York Times last week. A new art season, a new test for survival. The art market is in crisis and the art fairs are largely to blame. And another article in Art Space the same week was abolish the art fair while Basel's new tiered pricing structure can't fix a bankrupt model. This is against total stupidity. Because art fairs are not working because there's an art fair very wealthy director who said, oh, I'm going to make money by doing an art fair. I don't think it's the case. But it's, the thing is that the collectors or the buyers, they like it. They like the principle of the shopping mall. Because an art fair is a shopping mall, nothing else. You have a lot of different shops in the same place with nice, events, a bit, people walking in the thing, a bit of fireworks and the whole. This is just an event, and people like to go to events, whether they buy it or they don't buy. But remember only one thing, is that in retail, in the years 1960, the shopping mall became the thing that people wanted. They wanted all the shops to be in the same place, and they started to build the shopping malls outside of the cities, and everybody was running to the shopping mall. I don't have to tell you that the shopping malls are suffering now. Nobody wants to go to the shopping malls anymore. They want to go back to the inner cities, and people are redeveloping cities. The same thing could happen in the art world. It's possible to bring back people to the galleries, because people will be tired of going to art fairs, and everybody knows that art fairs have it more and more difficult right now because sales on art fairs are decreasing. So maybe there's something changing, but trying to speak about the art fair as responsible is totally wrong, because it's at the end of the day, that's what I wanted you to remember, that galleries, art buyers of collectors, artists are the key decider. And for me, art fairs are just kind of a symptom of the problem, and they are not the thing. And that's my last slide. So if you have any questions, or we go forward with the next panel or whatever. Any questions maybe to this presentation? Nobody understands English? Okay, thank you very much.
in Warsaw as a curator, state-run and publicly funded institution. And it would be disingenuous of me to say that I'm not part of the art market. However, I would like to shift the conversation maybe for just a little bit from art market to art system, to broaden up this also for the sake of our local audiences. Because my reflection, listening to Alan's very engaging talk, was that how many of the problems addressed in the presentation are so far removed from the reality of many galleries and artists in Warsaw and in Poland in general. So, of course, every local art scene deals with different problems and different dilemmas, but for once, we can speak about how to control the art market, and I actually really sympathize with what Alan said about controlling the infrastructure, of maybe implementing some regulations, as you do in sports, but also maybe against the neoliberal model a little bit, you know, how you do in social democratic countries. I mean, could this apply potentially for the art market? And I was thinking how we are slowly, step by step, trying to achieve the same in Poland as part of the art system. So thinking about equal pays, wages for artists, thinking about health insurance for artists, because the scene here is extremely precarious. I mean, we're not even thinking about, will I be able to afford operation costs or Ryanair flight to Kondo? We're speaking about how am I actually going to produce work if I'm an artist? My main buyer, collector is probably a public institution. I'll probably sell 1 or 2 works per year if I'm lucky. And if you're a gallerist, then, I mean, I can't even imagine the amount of pressure and anxiety that art practitioners must face in Warsaw. And I'm speaking from a very privileged position of, yeah, basically I spend public money on producing work and paying artists, and occasionally paying galleries if we buy the work from galleries. So to shift the conversation back to Europe and the globalized art world, I would like maybe to start with Darren, who, as Alain said, is about to open an experimental space in London after a hiatus and moving to Brussels to run a totally different initiative to his former space called Hotel. To those of you who may not have heard of Hotel, it used to be a very interesting gallery representing many cutting-edge experimental artists, including filmmaker Danton Campo, but also Rita Ackerman, if I'm not mistaken, and various others. And I was going to ask you, Darren, how, in your perception, the art landscape has changed since, the moment that your career evolved. What is the challenge now that wasn't back in the days when you were running hotels? And are there new maladies, but are there also new solutions?
Is this working? Yeah. One of the things that strikes me about when people talk about things changing is the opposite, how they don't change. My galleries in London, Hotel, the space that was mentioned, started off in the front room of my house. And it did so because we had the money and we couldn't afford rent and to rent space. And it was called Hotel because we gave a free room to artists who were staying in London, because even back then, way back in the past, London was expensive and we didn't have much to offer. It was something we could give you. We had a spare bedroom, you can stay there. And that was how it started. And I think today we still see the same things where people are trying to find ways of, well, how do I do this thing? This completely unneeded, not necessarily wanted. No one's going to give me a salary to do it. My parents will probably think I'm an idiot for doing it, and I should have done more in any case. How do I get to do this? And how do I make a little bit of space, a bit of a gap? The new space that I'm opening came out of a similar situation. I mean, Hotel closed 5 years ago. We went bust. The after effects of the 2008 crash eventually killed off the gallery a few years later. And I kind of swore down I'd never open another gallery in my life. Had very long conversations with my therapist about it. I'm never ever going to do it. Then a space became available. A room. So in a very 2018 way, someone had built a new building. They were selling apartments upstairs for a lot of money, and they wanted something cool, quote unquote, on the ground floor. If they gave me the space, would I do something? And it was out of that, again, little gap, that you start to think, right, okay. It's like if someone said to you, this room is free next month, what would you do? Even if you think it's a stupid idea, your brain immediately goes, well, what would I do? Who would I talk to? And stuff like that. And out of those conversations, and out of that kind of wandering that every gallerist I know has. Gallerists are always looking at empty buildings. They're always having kind of wandering thoughts in their mind. They're dreamers a little bit, well, the interesting ones are. And so that was the kind of conversation. So the kind of what is different, I'm not entirely sure. I think a lot of things are exactly the same. You don't have any money when you start. You're likely to lose your best artists to bigger galleries. You will go unthanked by your artists if things go wrong, and if you there's a million reasons not to do it. But if you think there's a reason, or there's something interesting you can do within your situation, whether that's in Warsaw or in Paris or in New York or in London, then a gallery is one of the most direct ways you can do that. It's really, really easy. You take a room, you take an artist you invite a few people, you now have a gallery. Having it 10 years down the line is a completely different matter, but to start it is really easy. You just need a little gap, really.
And how important for you is your discursive program, talks, performances, everything that we saw in the presentation by Alan that described the new space, the Free House? I mean, do you perceive it as part of your community building activities, or is it relevant to the art system, to the short span of an artwork life and the artist's life to sustain this system?
It's a lot more organic than that, really. I mean, the hotel had the front room was where the exhibitions happened, and there was our dining room, and the dining room had a table round, like our dining table. The most important things that happened to me with hotel happened around that dining table. They were conversations, they were people telling me about what was happening in a different city. They were kind of, we met artists through that. To me, talks and like kind of performances, all those kind of things, I think they're important because I'm greedy. They're information, they're kind of ways of kind of expressing stuff and seeing stuff and hearing stuff and you've got the space, use it,
I've asked about this because on one hand we may associate the collateral program more so with the public programming of institutions like museums, but it has also become a core aspect of art fairs offerings. Biggest art fairs include anything from curated public art sections to special debates on how to collect, how to survive the art market, how to exit the art market. So just to comment on what Darren said, I think, the information becomes as relevant as the actual art object, in the sense of global art circuit. But can you maybe say something, comment about Independent, which is now in its 4th year, or
Paris International?
Paris, sorry, Paris International, which is now in its
4th edition, 3rd year.
Edition, yes, which also started, as I understand, as this disenchantment with big mega-scale art fairs, big shopping malls. But how has this experience of leaving the big shopping mall towards, let's say, boutique concept store affected the galleries, affected you, and if you can also comment something about your selection criteria, because as far as I know, you mentioned in some interviews that you're welcoming many, right?
Well,
but there is
we try at least.
We try, but there is always what is the actual selection process?
It's, where should I start? A lot to unravel here. Maybe Paris International, going back to the genesis of it, was founded back in 2015, and it was nicknamed for a while the Salon des Refusés from FIAC because it was implemented by a generation of galleries which had participated in FIAC but weren't sure of being invited year after year after year, or galleries which participated in what FIAC had back then was the off-fair was called Officiel, but didn't really find their that was up for them, that they weren't content about it, and so it was sort of a generational push, and of, as Anna mentioned before, an independent spirit of taking your future into your own hands and fill the void, or be the change that you want to see implemented in the world. And so they improvised the fair in 3 months, just like Independent was improvised in 3 months, and rented a building and invited people. And this is very the very essence of it. Quintessentially, it's an invitation-based fair, so it's extremely subjective. I'm embarrassed to say, when you ask about the selection process, it's terribly unprofessional. We meet and we yell at each other, and eventually, who's the who yells the louder ends up, having his favorite galleries invited. It's exactly it. It's a community of like-minded curated galleries. 4 Parisian galleries and 1 gallery from Zurich were at the initiative of it. It's a very fluid structure. One of the founders decided that it was too much work and decided to step out last year. So we opened the selection committee to external influences. It's it's only in its fourth year, so we try to be as open and as inclusive as possible, because I think at the very core of it, one must ask oneself, why to do it, and how can this be an instrument of good, and how can it be more than the simple sum of its parts, and so I guess we established very early on principles that the fair should be free and remain free, that the sole responsibility that we have is to make it a fruitful time and a profitable experience for our exhibitors, and that's pretty much it. It's very basic, but I mentioned the gratuity of the fair because you introduced the public programming. It took a more important part in fairs, and sort of questioning why should this happen in fairs, and I think I'm willing to answer very simply that because we can do it, and I realized that I worked very briefly for a gallery in New York, and we did a fair, a very established fair in 2015, and didn't sell a single work. And the whole operation, transport price, accommodation of the team, price of the booth, which was like 40,000 euros or something, ended up costing the gallery $100,000 in a week economy. And so it doesn't have to be like that. At a fair, at a fair where people who wanted to get in had to pay 45 euros to get in. So it disqualified from the get-go art students, people who wanted to educate themselves. Alain mentioned before the importance of promoting co-authorship, and I guess in a time where, it's funny, I'm thinking of a talk that Mark Spiegler gave, our father to all Mark Spiegler, where actually he quoted Ryu and he brought a number, and I don't remember where he got it from, but about the time that people have today that they can spend, into the leisure time that they have at the disposal, maintaining their wealth, and the time that they can spend, into traveling the world, educating themselves, building an art collection. That's the responsibility we have, is to make it easy for people who want to know more, who want to be given access. The one thing you can do is to give them access.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I was also thinking how, we are in a permanent crisis of knowledge production, so also like typical models of, let's say, lectures are also, quite often like models that don't work anymore to attract the audience, but I'm linking it somehow to what Alain said about privileging events for which you have to pay. Like if I get to pay for something, I value the quality, I value the interest. And I was thinking, I wanted to ask Martha now about who's I guess independent curator of many talents and travels. In the past, she ran Fahrenheit Foundation in Los Angeles, which was also a residency. Right now, she's working with Laure Provost next French Pavilion for the Venezuelano. And in our couloir discussions, we were also talking how curators, so-called independent curators, but also curators from public, private institutions are often pulled by art fairs to work on art fair sections. They're part of juries, they're part of panels. I'm wondering if that's important at all, but Martha, I wanted you to address this constant shift, of yourself as an art professional in terms of let's say, the resource that is driving your work? Do you even believe in the term independent curator? Can we be happily dependent curators, perhaps?
Well, many questions, yeah. Well, first of all, I'm independent just because I'm not hired by an institution, so per se that's already a fact in a way. And of course, independence is a state of mind, and I think for a curator, it's a question of ethics, and that's something that my practice and my career developments have been really influenced by, I think, ethics. You know, back in a few years ago, I started somehow my young career in New York, working at MoMA New Museum, and independently. And when I moved back to Europe in 2010, I was working as an independent curator, and there was no way I could pay, my rent, or just from curating exhibitions at small galleries, like friends' spaces, sometimes a museum. And I was 27, and I was hired by a collector, in fact, who was based in Israel, and he wanted me to build a collection of young emerging artists for him. And he had no idea really how to even proceed with me, how to pay me, what to ask me. But I had a pretty strong vision of the artist I wanted him to buy, just with the idea of exploring this young scene with him. And so I immediately thought that I could not get any percentage from sales, that it was really against being what I defend as a curator. Obviously, if I'm asking him to buy a work and I get a percentage in a way, the value of the work is of course gonna rise on both like a cultural and market sense, and I will get paid just from the sales. And so I decided I was paid with a flat fee, and I also had this kind of like Robin Hood instinct. I mean, it was a couple of years ago. I hope I still have it, but like every time an artist was working with a big and a small gallery, I insisted on buying from the small gallery. That was always, even if some of the works were also really good at the big gallery, and that happened to many artists because somehow younger artists in Europe sometimes had a big gallery in Europe, but the other way around. So in a way, that was a sort of an engagement from my end to say, well, we're going to try to grow together, young artists, young curators, young galleries. We're going to somehow team up, maybe, and not against anyone or maybe against the system, in fact, and really support each other in this way. And so I was really, when I realized that I was being paid maybe 1,200 euros a month, and we bought works that were worth, like so much. In fact, like between 50,000, 70,000. If I had taken 10% of each sale, I would have been so much richer today. But I really don't care somehow. And I'm also quite proud of having made this decision, just because today I can like look at people straight in the face and say, yeah, I never took 10% of your sale, and I'm still an independent curator in that sense. And yes, I will work for public endeavor as the Venice Biennial without having in a way got into this paradox in which curators are often tied with, and many museum directors, many curators, especially in the US, are hired by collectors, are hired by important art fairs to develop programs. I'm working with some art fairs. I can say I'm on the selection committee of Art Brussels, and I'm in charge with 4 other people of the discovery section. So we proposing. I mean, we're selecting artists. For instance, Przemek Peszczyk is here. We selected him with Galerie de Rouillon last year. I think the feeling I have is that I'm often hired because somehow I have this very international profile, and I'm French from Polish origin, so I worked with many Polish artists, but also, of course, I'm very tied to the French scene, but I lived most of my professional life in the US, in New York and LA, and I've worked a lot in the Middle East as well, so it's already a lot of coverage, and I know that the reason why I'm asked to do a lot of things related to art fairs is because of my network, and that I can bring, galleries from Beirut and from LA and from Warsaw and, maybe France into a program. And then maybe to finish somehow on this connection between art fairs and curators. Definitely also I know I'm hired by art fairs because that legitimizes them and their programs and their existence. And in fact, they know that if they have this person creating a film program or a performance program, maybe it's going to make them look a little bit more viable, on content-wise. I do it because somehow I'm curious of different models I want to experience. I'm not even extremely well paid when I work for art fairs. Like, to be very honest, it's sometimes not more paid than creating an exhibition, but it's somehow interesting. For instance, last year I curated the film section of Art Rotterdam, and it's a really beautiful section. It's one of the very few art fairs, or maybe the only one in Europe, that really has a film section that's really designed within the fair with beautiful floating screens, and I have like a full freedom. So I thought, let's bring artists from Iran, from Turkey, from Israel, Laure Prouveau, Juliette Lightman, people who I'm working with on some almost a daily basis, and they really came up together quite nicely. So they invited me again for next year, so I said yes. And I'm curating the film and performance program for Dama in Turin, and it's interesting because it's an off fair, and they're quite small. In fact, it's the second edition, and also it's not Artissima, it's Dama. But also for me, those hierarchies they don't even count for me somehow. Like when I started to work in Europe, I curated a show at Palais de Tokyo, and the next month I curated a show at Stereo in Poznan. There was no heat, and they paid me 200 euros to curate the show, and I really didn't care at all. And I think it's important. Within my practice, this independence is also like not being, not having to relate to necessarily neither money nor the size of institution or their prestige, and to keep my really free, will, and say, well, like this person, he runs like the smallest space you can think of in fucking Paraguay, but I'm gonna do it, and he pays me nothing. But then on the other hand, MoMA is gonna invite me for a talk, and that will pay for my rent. If we only speak about money, and then there's also the curiosity, I think, that has to define a curator, which is you always have to challenge your limits, and also the people you work with. It's so nice. I wish I could work all my life with Laure Prouveau, or Agnieszka Polska, or Caroline Mesquita, or artists I'm really attached to. But also I think it's important to just like move forward and challenge our, I would say, comfort zones.
So you mentioned ethics, and I was wondering if I can ask each of you for a very confessional statement about values. Like, which values drive your practices? Because you come from like such different levels or elements of the art system, and I wonder how. Of course, we can name the most common ones, such as loyalty. If we think about artist, gallery, relationship, which is not as obvious and not as common as we know. But I wonder, maybe Alan, can you talk about values of the collector, if there are any?
I have always difficulty with the big words, but I would rather say, first of all, why I'm interested in art. I have no past relationship to art. My parents were not collecting art. I never studied art history. So why am I interested in art? I'm interested in art for the fact that it helped me to understand and dig deeper into myself. And I realized that art can be an important bridge into any society. And that's why I'm following it. This is why I'm collecting, which involves sharing it. There's a public space in Brussels, and we spend quite a lot of money to show the art and share it for nothing in return, and to spread it out. So the idea is really to try to defend the art as a social factor. It's nothing to do with commercial elements. I was in London at a Philips conference with whatever, and the question was, why are you investing in art and are you making money out of it? I said, no, I'm not investing in art at all. But I happen to make money out of it because when you're choosing with knowledge and your heart, then you get to some results, certainly in the current situation. So I would say the values, I don't know. The thing is really, I have a passion, but not only passion, because I could have a passion for stamps or music or golf or anything else. I think it's really important today. I'm clearly addicted to media and all different elements. I think that today it's difficult to have an alternative discussion on anything except in arts. And that's why I'm very interested in spreading it out. I remember that when Trump was elected, Jerry Saltz wrote an article and said, what can we do? There are two things. Either we do another documenta when we show that we're very hungry by showing the worst side of, we show that we're hitting, we don't like it, we criticize everything, or we try to open up to the more general public. I think it's very important to position myself. I position myself by trying to be more accessible to the general public with the works I'm acquiring and the works I'm showing. So I don't want to go too much into esoteric arts. I don't like art about art, for example, and things like that. Arts is the first value, and that's the only thing. And because I think it's got a very important social value that people are losing sight of when you're too much into the art world.
Values, maybe. Oh, and it's not like a self-therapeutic exercise. We all congratulate ourselves that we are loyal and support artists, and But I think we often forget that art system is also like a system of friendship. I mean, that it's an alternative model for a family, at least like for me as well. That like you establish relationships with people whom you work, whom you see occasionally at art events. I know it sounds very jet setting, but what values maybe for hotel drove like your what were significant values for hotel when you run it, and how the relationships with artists you represented came about?
Well, they changed. The act of putting on. I opened a hotel because I could control it. I thought, it was a space that was mine, and I used to work for Chisholm Hill Gallery, where I curated, and then I worked for another gallery, and this was a space I could curate jobs. I could pick the artists and just play around with graphic design and stuff like that. And I thought I had control. That was the initial appeal. It was an exhibition kind of thing, and what I love about that, and what I still love about something about galleries, that those little white boxes or whatever they are, or your booth, or like your leaflet or pamphlet or your website, whatever, is the speed you can do it. Like the art that always attracts me is the art that's finding a very fast line between what it wants to say and how it says it, whether that's through drawing or video or performance or whatever. It's like, I want to say this is the fastest route I can think of doing it, And an exhibition making a bit like that, but obviously if you have a gallery, over the time it gets more complicated. Kind of money gets involved, ambition gets involved, kind of personal relationships get involved, and it changes. And I don't know, it's kind of, I think it's now going back into it, it's like having to, I freely admit I fell out of love with art for a little bit and kind of just wasn't interested whatsoever. And then a couple of years ago, it's like kind of found that I was getting interested again, and it was like, well, how do I express this? What can I do with very small resources? What is the thing I can do? The thing I can do is I can find a little space and go, look, I believe in this person. Have a look at it, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Come back to me in a couple of weeks, and you have to fill you in.
It's my turn, sorry. I didn't realize it was my turn already. only due to the fact that I didn't really understand it. I can't have both. I don't know, to be honest. I know for sure that I wouldn't know to do anything else. I know that that's the way I've chosen to, express myself, and there's nothing that moves me more, than...
Also addressing something that Martin talked about in terms, for instance, of buying from smaller galleries. Do you also have this sort of against survival of the fittest attitude that you try to foster in your art fair, or do you even consider it still an off fair, or do you think it's an established, it's a very established enterprise, and there's a whole different set of questions attached to it?
No, it's definitely off and definitely not very established. It's only its 4th edition. I would say that there is a reason why. I think what matters to us most is basically it's a platitude, but it's the general level of presentations. And the reason why the fair is cheap, if I may say, because on the scale it's a lot of money. The booth range from like $4,500 to $7,000 euros, sorry. And the reason why it's that price, it's because we just want to make sure that galleries can show whatever they want to show, without being afraid of being hit financially if this proves to be like a financial, like an unsuccessful operation. Because when you're being requested to pay large sums of money to cover the cost of participation to a fair, then you kind of want to make sure that you bring artworks that you will be able to sell. And for a portion of your roster or the artists that you represent or work with, it means that they will never see a work of them, hung in an art fair booth. Not that they want to, but it's another question. So that's. I think the Fair Paris International is a non-profit, meaning that the one goal is to keep the participation costs as low as possible. And that's part of the DNA in terms of value, if I may answer like that.
I just wanted to add something, because your values, you said, I like the art world because it kind of creates a family, and this is exactly what I hate in the art world. I'm super happy when I go back home and I forget about the art world, because it's extremely navel-gazing, always the same people, networking. I don't like when I came here for a friend of a friend, didn't like to hear that Local 30 was not part of the thing. I don't like that Christophe Gaillard in Paris took 3 more years to get into FIAC because he had a fight about an artist with Natalia Sielewicz. I don't like that it is galleries that are part of the selection committee of art fairs, because it's all about friendship and things like that. I don't like that it's always the same community and everything. I don't like all this. Because we forget about the fact that what I said, this is all about the art. This is the art that should be the center of the thing. This is not about individual advantages, friendship, and sometimes, and too often, I see people that are not able to say, I would rather go for the good solution than rather to go to my friends.
But I'm not speaking about, anecdotes at Deutsche Bank, VIP booth at Frieze that I clink champagne with, friends from London. I'm speaking about everyday reality of, no work-life balance, like working with people 24/7, like being actually also as a curator in like deep shit with your artist friends, like establishing your relationships in this pattern, not only, art system being something which I can visit and exit at any given moment when I want. I'm actually thinking about this as entrenchment, actually, And so just to clarify, like what I said about friendships, because I think ultimately you sustain those friendships with people because you believe in art. So what you just said, it's not because I need extracurricular activities with exciting, smart people who dress in a fancy way, but because ultimately we like to believe that we believe in the same thing, which is art.
Exactly, and I think what you're talking about is gossips, so we're talking about our daily lives.
I'm not talking gossip at all.
Well, I mean, you mentioned this gallery.
For example,
and this
I
other
see-
gallery. No, I think you are. And you know what, for us, this is our lives and our jobs, and we do, Natalia and I, we are curators, we work with artists, as she said, 24/7, we deal with what it is to, conceive an exhibition, to produce it, to also talk with galleries, with museums, with collectors if you need it. And it's exactly as she said, that's something we can close at night and go back to our other job, because we don't have any other job,
I just like
I had to say this,
When I said earlier that I kind of fell out of love with the art world, it's the kind of thing, when I came back to it, I started to think of the art world as being like a community, like slightly different to a family, but a community, and you kind of, and if you're working in the production side of it, whether you're putting on shows or like kind of making art or like art fairs or whatever, it's like you need the other members of that community. You need relationships, you need, and for it to function, and I found this out in a very personal way, for it to function, you have to add something, and the kind of, so I think when you said family, to me, I think of it as like the community. When we first did Independent, I had the first galleries, I had to call up my friends, and Maureen Bailey was the first gallery I called because she was my neighbour and I knew her and stuff like that. So there is a bit of a, as you say, a bit of a kind of I knew her sort of thing, but that was a necessity of production. In the same way that like when an artist needs to make something, the people they will call will probably be their friends. It's like, I think if you're involved in the production of something, friendships and communities are important because they'll also help you.
To add something, for instance, even to me personally, beyond the notion of family, I'm really thinking strongly about the notion of generation, and something that really encourages me to continue to do what I'm doing is to grow up, to grow old, I guess, as well, with a generation of artists, of course, other curators, but also young galleries, and also maybe young collectors, and also, fair directors of young art fairs, why not? And I believe in this, actually, very much in, because we're friends. But I believe in the fact that, we'll just like keep growing up and keep also moving forward together. And I feel the support from my peers, and I think we also look at the world in the same way, and the way it's changing. So somehow, if I have to be, an idealist, it would be in that sense. That I think that makes us stronger. Also against, the harsh, system that we are all thrown into, and a neoliberal reality that is crushing us on an everyday basis, basically. Whether we in Poland, in France, or in the US. So yeah.
So I just want to answer that as well. Then I must be totally mistaken when I hear many artists, sometimes good one, whether I find it myself or they find someone else, that cannot get in the right places because they don't have the right friendships. So many galleries I know that are extremely good, but maybe they are, more abrasive, less keen on the Petit Rouge at night in Paris to get in the right fairs.
Less keen on what?
Le Petit Rouge in Paris, or whatever city
what
in
is
the world.
What is the Petit Rouge in Paris? Does anyone here know the Petit Rouge in Paris?
No, what I mean
about if you're
what I
in
mean,
your living room, maybe try to address people who don't necessarily have your references.
Petit Rouge is very simple. It's to have drinks after 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Thank you for explaining.
Yes, that's it. That's what I mean. So I think it must be mistaken if many people think that to make it in the art world you don't need only talent. You need to have friendships and relationships. And it's well known. I know the other example. I was speaking to an older gallerist and telling me, you know why these galleries had always 2 or 3 artists in Harald Seemann's biennales or whatever, please. It's just because the wife of Harald Seemann was her best
and
friend.
you're speaking about another scale.
We're not talking about this.
About mega scale, and I think this is hijacking the conversation in a totally different spot. And actually, you yourself, your presentation dealt with collaboration as a model of survival. What is collaboration? It is establishing ties, friendships. Okay, maybe they're not. Please forgive me by including the word family, and maybe it's this Polish right-wing thing entering my mouth.
Don't let it enter your mind too deeply, Natalia, please.
But I was also thinking, that we're really lacking an artist on this panel. Maybe there's an artist who would like to sit with us, and because I also have to go to work. Sorry, but I'm thinking about being on the job 24/7. I actually have to go to open a performance. Also let's ask the producers how they feel about it.
Hi. Some of you know me. My name's Bitsy. Full disclosure, I started as an artist in this world 15 years ago. I now work for Art Forum magazine as the representative in Germany and Poland, so mostly dealing with advertising. I spend a lot of time talking to galleries, and a lot of time going to exhibitions. I have many artist friends. I spend an awful lot of time wondering who we work for. Because I often see what we might think of as a kind of a de jure and de facto pyramid happening in the art world. So, whereas we're all working for art, I have devoted my entire life since I was 10 years old to this business. I love it. I love art. It makes me cry, but it's also, I find myself wondering more and more, who's paying me? And not just Art Forum does pay me, and galleries pay me when I write texts for them, and whoever else, if I sold a work, somebody will pay me for that as well. But, I think we really have to look at who we're working for. Are we working for artists? Are we working for collectors? And who are the collectors that we're working for again? And who are the banks? And who are the organizations? And who are the government? Where's the government money coming from? And then where do we end up in the middle? Yes, we're all part of a community. I see all of you all the time. It's a pretty small world that we work in. But I don't know. I'm missing something from this conversation. And I think that one of those things is this question of this actual de jure de facto pyramid. Are the artists at the top or are they at the bottom?
Any artists who like to?
Przemek had something he wanted to say.
Oh, hi, I'm Kirszenbaum. Sorry, it's awkward hearing yourself on a mic in a random room like this. About kind of, friends or groups or cliques or whatever. I think some people have good intentions, some people have bad intentions. So if there's a group of people that want to start an initiative and do something really positive, that's an amazing thing. It's okay, well, let's use social connections, to have a new initiative or something that can help artists. But then there are other groups where it's certain Berlin dealers keeping people out of art fairs. That's a reality too. And those are well-documented things that happen. So I don't think it's, social cohesion is an issue. It's just really what people's kind of intentions are beneath that. Thank you.
Anyone?
Seems like everyone lost track of what we were talking about in the first place. Maybe we'll open to questions.
Yeah.
The moderator left, so it's a coup d'etat here. I'm taking control of this conversation. Do you want to open it to questions?
Yeah. Please, if you have any questions.
Well, thank you for taking the energy and the time to explain. Sometimes you're working, but you don't know how to translate and to explain what is the difficulties or what you're doing. But My question would be, what is the biggest demand or the most common demand that you find in the galleries? For instance, galleries approaching you with your project? Yes, and you as a curator, the artist, the biggest complaint, like the most common denominator complaint you're receiving, and you also, from artists, I guess, you are receiving some it's not a complaint, it's just like a struggle or some demand that they need to cover or something that they are lost in right now in the market. And I would say, Alain, I don't know if you receive many complaints or many from galleries and from artists, and I know there is a friction here, because sometimes when a collector is talking from this distance, but I tell you there are different kind of collectors, there are different kind of artists, there are different kind of galleries, but most of them are sharing some common issues, right? So that's my question now. What is the common issue that you, for your work or your profession, are receiving from the galleries, you from the artists, and you, I don't know, you receive from curators and artists and galleries? What would be the biggest worry right now?
I think if I can jump into this, I would say something I often talk about with my artist friends or collaborators is maybe the repetition of power between artists and curators. And very often when I speak with artists, I realize that they really think that their impression is that you know, the curators are really here because they have they can come to an artist whenever they want. They call up, they say, hey, can I come by for a studio visit? Can I come enter your work and see what you're doing, how you dress, how you behave? You know, what do you read, what do you listen to? And then you, the curator, you're going to decide whether I will be in this biennial, in this triennial, in this exhibition here and there. And you will also give me a price or not a price. You will also give me, you know, a space at the fair or not. And so, I don't know, very often with them, I was joking of something I would actually really like to start doing is to have artists doing visits with curators, you know, that an artist could come to my house and look at how I am dressed at home and what I'm reading right now and what I'm working right now, and he'll be sitting in front of me being like, no, not this PDF, but maybe the PDF from 2012, because that's way more interesting when you were back then at Fahrenheit, because now the biennial, are you kidding me, that's so established. Or maybe even artists could actually give a prize to curators, being like, hey, you are actually the finalist with 5 other motherfuckers who actually maybe one of you are going to win this prize for the best French curator or the best Polish curator. And that would be an interesting shift of power. And actually, I would love that to happen. Yeah.
Coming up, obviously I'm based in London, the conversations I have with artists and galleries and people who work for art fairs and everything in London at the moment, the questions that artists are asking is no different to the questions everybody else is asking. You know, England is marching towards a political situation with Brexit that doesn't know how it's going to affect its relationships with the rest of the world. You know, racism is now commonly heard on the streets and stuff like that. The whole, which for me makes art incredibly important again, and it makes the work of artists incredibly important and what like spaces are doing and how we show that and the importance and the kind of urgency behind it. You know, it's like what's great is artists. When I have conversations with artists, they're not talking about things about curators or the kind of magazines and stuff like that. They're talking about a bigger political situation that affects where they live, like how will it affect their personal relationships with their kind of partner who might come from a different country in Europe, how will it affect their studio costs, where they get to show, stuff like that. Artists are part of the society in which we live, and they seem to be as concerned and interested in that as possible. I mean, it's a direct illustration of the space that I'm opening. The lease I've signed has a 1-year break clause in it because I don't know what situation the UK will be in a year's time. A lot of the artists I'm talking to don't know whether they'll have studios or whether they'll be able to transport their work freely from the UK to their European galleries. So for me, the kind of conversations that artists are having are the same as the conversations as the guy who owns my con shop are having. And that makes art relevant right now.
interested in the gallery side.
I was hoping you'd forget me.
My name is Philip Wilson, I'm a journalist, and just like Betsy, I oftentimes ask myself, who am I writing for? Am I serving some kind of a commercial system? Am I feeding into value-making mechanisms in the art world with what I cover and stuff like that? But I try not to let it completely throw me into an existential kind of crisis, because as you said, that's the only, like curating or doing art space is the only thing you know how to do. Or one of you said that, I think that, writing about art, yes. I don't know what else I would do if it wasn't doing what I'm doing, but I think that, Alain, I agree with a lot of what you say, but I think that the essence of what everybody's doing here, when they know what they're talking about, when they say that they're doing this for art, is something that cannot be part of the market the way other things are, part of a financial system the way, a shopping mall is. I was just in Korea for the biennials, and there was another one that I didn't get to write about, Media City in Seoul, and the focus of that biennial was not so much artworks, but kind of like, what do we need to live? Like, what do we need, besides a functioning healthcare system and quality? What consists our quality of intellectual life? And I'm just thinking about, what would I do if I didn't see models that are not part of the financial system, that are completely nonsensical, that make absolutely no financial sense, but are, like a lot of galleries, like Jen, if your gallery's from Poznan, he just told me there is nobody in Poznan who's gonna come to his gallery and buy art from them. It absolutely makes no financial sense, but it's wonderful. It's wonderful. If I was a young 20, whatever, a teenager living in Poznan, and I would discover this place that I could go to, and I could see a model that is not enslaved to this financially, financial dictatorship that we see everything everywhere else, that operates outside of the system, that kind of like does its own thing, and exposes you to other ways of being, and kind of like other ways of thinking, and other ways of resisting. I don't know where I would be if I didn't have those things, having exposure to those things back in the day in Israel when I was growing up. I think it's extremely important that the art world, of course, we're not naive about how much money and the whole financial aspect. We can't be naive about it, especially not working kind of like on the crossroad between value making and we have to ask ourselves difficult questions, but we also have to let art kind of just be without price on it, without making it efficient always. It doesn't always have to be efficient, and I think that's extremely important.
I need to answer. It's funny because it's kind of a misunderstanding of what I mean by art, because art is not the art market. I don't care about the art market. I'm spending a lot of time out of it, totally. I mean, anybody knows me knows that I'm not around and I'm more going to biennials than to art fairs or whatever. So a couple of things clear from that point of view, because it's also a kind of a caricature of the collector. I mean, collectors are always thought as just a money provider, and Marta was speaking about the fact that she would like sometimes that an artist asks her to come at her home. I can tell you that 90% of the time when I'm discussing with an artist the acquisition of a work of art, of course, sometimes I have the impression that he's passing an interview with me, a job interview, okay? 90% of the time, before the end of the talk, I said, do you want to ask me any question about my collection? Because you're going to be part of it. This is a partnership, okay? This is not me acquiring your thing. No. What is quite surprising is that the guy or the girl has got no clue about what she wants to ask me. In a way, in some way, they're not interested. Because I'm just a check signer. I'm just signing check. We're not only signing checks, okay? We can be something else. We can be part of the discussion we like curators, like things, we know quite a bit as well. So when I'm talking about art, I'm not talking about the art system, the art market, the art value in any way. The same way as when people ask me, okay, what are you going to do with your collection when you die? I said, I don't care, because what art brought me, and that is the art I was referring to, that you're referring to about the media biennial, Media City Biennial in Seoul, where I was at the previous one, is I loved it because it opened up the minds. So when people ask me, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. My kids will take it, or they will sell it, or they will put it on the sidewalk. I don't care. Because the most important thing that art brought me is the life experience, to be here in Warsaw, to be in Seoul at the time, to meet people, to listen to different discourse and to see different things. So this is absolutely not about being part of the system and so on. Then everybody is always talking, art is not about efficiency. My most frequent complaint that I hear from artists coming in residency with me, mostly it's artists without gallery representation, or galleries talking to me about how to survive and everything. Most of the thing is about how do I make it to the ladder, on the ladder, okay? So the only thing I can say is that currently the system is not based most of the time on meritocracy. It is based a lot on relationship in many ways, okay? It's not a question of the quality of the job you do, and I know galleries doing an amazing job, professional, better than what we see. Why is it that 90% of the galleries at least stays the same over so many years? You know? Why is it that it's always the same crew? Why is it always, you need to get into a relationship? And when I speak to galleries from Madrid or Warsaw or anywhere else, I say, you have to become part of Kondo. You know why I'm telling them to be part of Kondo? Because it gets you in a community which is a community with a future. And being in Kondo, meeting them, knowing them will allow you maybe to get onto international, because I know some galleries that would like to be international, and I think they're really good. But there's no way to get international except if you get in a circle in many ways. So you know.
So let's maybe ask Clément about that. Sorry, but no, in the sense that I'm wondering. I feel like Paris International, the list is changing, no, year after year. You're accepting new people every year, aren't you? How does it work? No, but it's not a rhetoric question. It's a real question. Just
What percentage is changing?
No, it's not. What are the modalities of selection very concretely for Paris International? So we have like a real base for discussion.
Basically, this year we're having like a 25% turnover. We are welcoming about, last year was like 65 exhibitors, this year it's going to be closer to 50. We are changing venue, and so the venue is smaller, so mechanically there are less people. Many young galleries are being accepted into the Lafayette sector at FIAC, so they're leaving, which leaves room to invite new people. Some exhibitors from FIAC are coming to Paris International. The line is more and more porous, which is a reason to rejoice, I think, and altogether, it strengthens the market in Paris. The selection process, as I mentioned, is very unorganized. I mean, it's discussion based. It's an invitation based fair. There's a selection committee which invites the galleries they like, and we are open to any solicitation. Every proposal is being reviewed, each and every proposal, including for the non-profits. 8 non-profits were invited, and 160 applications were received and thoroughly reviewed, and it's a lot of time. I think at the end of the day, the aim is really to ensure that the general level of the fair is of aesthetic value, and that's the sole consideration. It's not true. I mean, I think it'd be a little naive to say that, so I owe you something better. There is also, of course, because, Anna is right, there are friendships and there are it's an industry like any other, and there are always like subjective parameters. So my concern, for instance, is to promote to support participants from geographic areas which are not being given enough visibility. For instance, we have a participant from Indonesia this year. We have a participant from Chengdu in China. And on our scale, because 50 galleries, it's nothing compared to the 250 galleries.
Last question.
Hi, I'm Evelyn. I'm here with a group of art students from Nuremberg. And also because Ellen, you mentioned education, I wanted to ask if you think that art academies or art schools, what is the responsibility of them in, how artists after the school get into the art system, also with the change of this typical gallery into this more collaborative form, and or should we just ignore all this and paint our paintings?
But there has been many studies recently showing that, I think a study came recently that in the United States, the degrees that had the least probability of you ever making money were linked to humanities, as you know it. So it's a question of passion as well. I mean, you need to know that it's the way. I'm sorry. What does it mean? If I cannot even finish what I'm saying,
No, but
you're interrupting me.
I'm
That's
not
fine.
interrupting you, actually.
Yes, you're
Sorry.
interrupting me with all your gestures behind my back. Okay?
What gestures behind your back? Can't I have the right to cite if I want
Yes,
to?
you can, but then you let me finish.
Are we-
Please. I haven't even started.
I haven't even said a word, so please finish.
Yes.
You are absolutely more than invited to finish. And you don't have to throw a microphone on this table.
Yes, I am, because this kind of treatment
Let's
is
go.
going down. Okay? So I'm sorry, there's nothing interesting I can say here in this present, so I'm sorry. I'm happy to answer. So the thing is, in terms of you need to have passion. What I see sometimes, if I see many artists around me, because I've been part of juries, I know I'm supposed to be just a motherfucker that knows nothing about art, but I know some more than some people sometimes. Okay, and some curators definitely. So I have a lot of artists in front of me. I've been part of many juries. What I see today is that many people embrace the arts career because sometimes they don't know exactly what else to do. I mean, it's convenient. I'm not so good in mathematics. I'm not so good in science. I cannot really wake up before 10 in the morning. So I get into the art for whatever reason. Of course, it's not the totality, but there are too many people like this. I get myself in front of juries of artists, and the question we ask ourselves in very high levels juries sometimes, what are those artists trying to tell us? Okay? Because we go back to what I think art is. Art should be saying something, telling something, bringing something new. It's not creating a new object, it's not being part of a community, it's about what are you bringing to the world at the end of the day. So, and sometimes I consider that art academies or art, schools are not making enough effort to point that to the people getting there. Sometimes I think that some art schools, I don't know how they let those artists go through in some way. Because they have interest as well. They need to have art, they need to have students, they need to have people paying. It's very often private schools, so they're not enticed to tell the truth that, sorry, you should maybe find another career because I'm sorry, with the kind of art you're creating, it will be very hard for you. They should be at least clear for it. So you're asking me what art schools are doing? They're doing a very good job, they're very good teachers. There's a lot of people that are kind of enjoying the industry in some way, in one way or another, and they're doing their thing. The last thing I will do before leaving this place is say one thing. Natalia started by saying earlier, what about the current situation in Warsaw? Because we don't have money to pay the social security to anything, to anybody else. And so the problem of the wider art market is not a problem that we have here. The only thing is, one thing I have to say, is that one of the big problems of the art world in general is the way it is poisoned by the money. Okay? The money makes it standardized everywhere in every form. I'm not going to the United States anymore because I consider it's the worst art scene anywhere. Because the artists are swallowing New York, the galleries in the Lower East Side are showing the same kind of show they show everywhere. Across the world, it's the same situation. So the advantage is that I went to 4 gallery weekends in a row: Copenhagen, Brussels, Madrid, and Warsaw. I can tell you that the art I saw in Warsaw was better than I saw in the 4 previous cities that I've seen. So the advantage of the disadvantage that you don't have any money here, you still have people that are very convinced, very passionate about what they do, and they have something to say. Because this is one of the problems that there is in the art world most of the time, is that nobody cares about the content, they're just happy to create new products, art products, close to luxury product. But that's all I have to say, so I will finish for this. Thank you very much, Michel, for the invitation. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, it's time. So it was a pleasure to be a part of that. And now
I think the lady asked a question about art academies. I think she was asking a question about art academies, and which I don't know a huge amount about, but it seems fair to try and answer the question. No, I wasn't. I was just airing.
Sure. Well, I've been part of juries too, and what I observed, the way art is being taught is also radically different depending on the pedagogical project of your school, and so whether you study art in one of the let's say like Bard or Goldsmith or the Städelschule, for instance, or you study it in the school in the countryside of France, you're being passed on like 2 very different realities, And I've seen schools, in France that have that are completely disconnected from the market. They don't even address it. So you ask students who Larry Gagosian is, and they have no idea. And I'm barely exaggerating. And then, you go to Bard, and I feel like students at the end of the first year, they're already they're market ready. They go to the right openings, they sit at the right dinners, and they know how to process their art in a way that it's it's sellable, or it's so. What's the role of the art academy? I would say it's essential. It's huge. It's a huge responsibility. But and I'm not being ironic. I would, it just I don't know how to answer your question. All I can tell you is that it's important. But if you don't mind repeating exactly what you wanted to ask in the first place, I got a little confused by the whole situation here. But,
actually, if we should just ignore this, or
I'm sorry.
If I could jump in, I'm an artist. I did my undergraduate at a school in Virginia. I'm from the States, and it's not really, not so involved in the art market. There's definitely no art market there. And then I did my master's in UCLA, and I went to the Städelschule at one point also, as a guest. And when I went to UCLA, the first thing we had a sort of session class that was once a week for an hour, where we would just talk about what it is to be a grad student then. And it was already this kind of LA grad student bubble, where people were being picked up already as really young grad students. And for me, it was kind of nice just to have an undergraduate that was really removed from that, because you have the space to just be weird, to try stuff out. fail a lot, figure out what you're doing, and not be so influenced by what's already established and what's working, And I will say though, when I got to grad school, there was something kind of nice about having this sort of almost warning. Like they really gave us an article. I think it was from the LA Times or something, but it was about LA grad students getting picked up and how it kind of ruined some of their careers because they didn't know how to progress beyond that. And I had one professor, Jeffrey Valance, who, he's around a contemporary of Raymond Pettibon, and he's like a really weird LA guy that's not very well known outside of LA. But he gave us some real world advice that no one ever talked about, which I thought was super valuable, and I still think about now, where he said things like, there's like a space for every type of artist, and you can't really compare what you're doing to other people within the market, and he had to still, at the time I think he was in his 50s, still remind himself of that you'll find your own way somehow, but to be aware of the fact that you have to realize that everyone you're working around is essentially a colleague, so it's probably nice to not make huge enemies if you can avoid it. I think like the things that he told us it was really cool, because at that time nobody talked to me about the realities of being a working artist, and he just kind of gave us some info, not about how to sell or whatever, but just some kind of just like truth tips, which I found super super helpful still. I think about it. So I don't know. I think it's in between the two, because then also being a shtetl, it's so it's such a gateway to market thinking. Like they give out prizes at the Rundgang that are partially decided by banks that fund these prizes, and everybody says you instantly see everyone's production value, just the visual production value of their works for that Rundgang. Everything looks way slicker suddenly, and it just changes what everyone does, and for the worse, to be too aware. So, I wish somebody had told me when I was in grad school how much I would be packing and unpacking my work constantly for shipment. And how to be a professional artist in the sense of just being able to keep track of your work and to be a better artist still. But these kind of practical things, I think that's super valuable to know. But to somehow have also one foot out the door and just be able to make work and just be weird.
It's funny, we talk about community constantly in this, you guys have been talking about this, about community, the idea of family. The most important thing is to find the people that you are the people that you like, the work, doesn't have to be work that looks like yours, but just work that you like and people that you like, and start a little space in your studio, and go to talks, go to readings, and just make your work, and then get really, as Lindsay says, get really good at being a good artist, archive your stuff properly and pack your work properly and take good photos. It's like these are the most simple things, but they make such a huge difference. I don't know, what would you say for jumping?
No, but honestly, yes, I should have started keeping a proper record of everything perfectly in the archive, and now I have to do basically forensic analysis of emails and hard drives to recompile this, and it's not even that much time.
And schlepping stuff.
Yes. And I think there's so many different paths to doing what you want to do and love doing as an artist, and there isn't one path. And I think when someone is disingenuous and it's like, oh, what's happening in the market? Oh, I want to be successful. I'm going to do this, that, and the other. People see right through it. So it's
only short-term viable.
Yeah, exactly. No, because even A-list star artists, when they have that big moment, it's like people forget because it is artificial. It suited a moment and a specific need of a douchebag banker collector. So
I was talking to a friend the other day about art school, and to say what the greatest thing about it was being on the same level as people who were learning at the same rate. And she's now a successful artist. And said once she was outside of art school, it was always dealing with curators who I seemed to know more, galleries who had a particular agenda or whatever. And art school was the bit where people were reading the same books at the same time, and they were kind of learning how to do stuff with archive same time. Those kind of friendships and that leveling, you know, there wasn't like, you weren't in group shows where there was the star artist and you know, it was like everyone was on this particular point, and I think that is one of the things like about college, one of the few times where you will be, like everyone will be roughly at the same point.
Okay, I think we have to stop now, finish this conversation. It's time. There are people working here. I think it would be great to follow the program. There is performance. I think it's at 6. It's a performance. Natalia. Yeah. So another one is on the CCA, Gwiazdowski Castle. Okay. Thank you very much.